because if they're being fake, that means they're living out of their survival self.
Ooh.
They need validation. They need
Ooh.
approval. So if we
They're
shift to
living out of
that,
their survival self.
yes, their survival
That's
self, which
so
is
freaking
so
powerful.
healing.
45 on the Hour podcast. I'm your host, Colt 45. And guys, I got a special podcast for you guys here today, okay? As you guys know, a lot of former veterans, first responders, they deal with trauma from the past. But there's a little bit more to trauma that you guys don't know, stuff that stems from your childhood and stuff that could be called PTSD complex. And I actually brought a good friend of mine now. Her name is Sarai. She's a psychotherapist, and she specializes in trauma complex. And I'm going to bring her on right now and introduce her. Say hello to the podcast. You're virtual.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. So just tell everyone about yourself real quick. I'm just kind of curious about like what it is that you do. Just a quick, little brief summary. And then I want to get into like how you turned into this, like how you became what you are today.
Okay. Well, what I do is I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida, and I own a community mental health center that I founded, and I've had it for 20 years. And we provide trauma-informed therapy here at my agency, and I also have a private practice, and I've developed coaching groups and stuff like that. But it wasn't always like this for me. There's a reason why I became interested in this, which is I'm also a survivor of complex PTSD. And so my mission is really to save people from the darkness of what happened to us and get people unstuck from there, and so that they could discover the light that really truly exists within them. And so that's what happened to me, and that's my mission, is to do that for others. And
So
I
you,
do it in all those ways that I just said.
so you said you were a survivor.
Yes,
Okay.
survivor.
Survivor. Okay. So you had dealt with someone that had trauma complex, right? Or PTS
It's
complex.
it's complex PTSD.
Okay. Complex PTSD. Got it.
Yeah. So PTSD, complex PTSD is, when we diagnose people, we don't diagnose them with complex PTSD because that doesn't exist in the manual for diagnosing.
Okay.
But it's a way more impactful uh it's not really a diagnosis, but a way to classify people who have suffered prolonged trauma, never ending trauma, and trauma mostly from someone or like your family or people who were meant to take care of you. So it's emotional, psychological, physical abuse. It's emotional and physical neglect. It could be growing up with someone with substance abuse issues, with a mental health issue, one of your parents dying, parental divorce, which by saying that, I don't want to say that divorce in itself is bad. It's more like toxic type of divorce where the children suffer from the divorce. It's also like growing up with parents who are emotionally immature, but not just growing up with them, but having prolonged suffering and prolonged trauma because of it. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
That does make sense. And I feel like
Yeah.
I have symptoms of that. That like everything
Yeah.
that you're saying, I feel like I have symptoms of that. I think that I might be someone that suffers from that because I know that in my life, like since I was born, I feel like I've been just in complete chaos since I was like probably like 4 or 5 years old since like the divorce of my parents.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think,
actually,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say, I that resonates with me. I just feel like from when I was 5 years old, it was like a struggle and chaos. And, my mom did her best, but at the end of the day, I think there was just a lot of that starting at a young age. And I'm just so used to trauma and I'm so used to chaos that I just feel more comfortable living in it.
It's familiar. Yeah, it becomes familiar.
Right.
It becomes the only thing that we know. And so, like, PTSD is a one-time event that happens to you, but a lot of people who have PTSD have a strong, secure, safe foundation. That's the difference between complex PTSD and just a one-event PTSD, where complex PTSD is like what you just said, which is we never truly experienced safety in our home. We never truly experienced what you just described. So it's very common. It's way more common than most people know, because trauma, abuse, childhood trauma is at a pandemic level. It's not it happens to the majority of kids. So I forgot the exact statistics, but the ACEs, which is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, is one of the biggest studies that really brought this to light. That which what it's talking about is all the things that I just listed earlier, which were like the emotional, psychological, and physical abuse, emotional and physical neglect, and all the other things like parental, mental health issues, substance abuse, one of the parents going to prison, those type of things. So the more of these that you get, or that you've experienced, the higher the likelihood that you're going to have mental health issues and also health issues. Even if you're someone like me, that I've healed, or I shouldn't say I've healed. I'm on the healing journey, and I'm living a very proactively healthy life. I have a higher we have a higher likelihood to experience one of these very popular, or I shouldn't say popular, but very common health issues like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, like those big ones. So when and also like a lot of people who have experienced this type of experiences and abuse, they also have a higher likelihood of what is it called? Uh, it'll come back to me. But
No, you're
yeah,
good.
the type of disease that is from your immune system. There's a
Oh,
higher likelihood.
autoimmune is like an
Autoimmune
autoimmune.
system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
autoimmune disorders. So you have a higher likelihood of autoimmune disorders, like people who are people pleasers, submissive, put their head down, they don't really speak their truth. They have the highest likelihood of autoimmune disorders. So it's all related.
Hmm.
Mind, body,
I'm surprised I haven't gotten
you know.
anything yet.
Well, you, you probably speak up.
I,
You
I
probably speak up.
I eventually speak up, but I'm definitely a caregiver, just in general. And yeah, that's just who I am. But like all the stuff you're saying like totally resonates with me, because I never thought about like my past as in leading to PTSD and having that be connected, because being a survivor of, being in a war zone and living the life that I lived, there was just constant PTSD. So having PTSD plus all those other symptoms from, separation and things like that, just being left alone and feeling abandoned, possibly. And then, traumatic stuff that happened between me and my dad, only because my dad, he changed his sex when I was younger, or he started to, and then he ended up doing it when he was 13. So I think that I felt a loss of like a parent, and I was like almost like mourning the death of a parent for a long time. And I think I had dealt with it so long, but I dealt it my own way. And the way that I dealt it was to just be stronger, and not even just stronger like mentally. It was like physically. Like I wanted to prove to everyone I was like this tough guy, this ultimate tough guy. In reality, I was just hurt. And I think that a lot of men are like that, because I've experienced toughness on different levels through all kinds of different men. That are in gangs and whatever you want to call them. Just trying to be like this person of magnitude. So that other people, maybe in the sense, don't look at them if they find out something about their history and be like, oh, well, at least he's tough, I won't say anything about that. It's almost like they can't be judged, but everyone can be judged, right?
Right.
But in reality, none of that matters. The only person that can judge you is God. So like in my eyes, like as soon as I think about that, that's what like humbles me. But I think that, dang, that's just so interesting. I had no idea there was like a tie-in with those two things. That's just
Yeah, and
totally it.
what you're describing is shame. And shame has a function, because shame is supposed to help us in life to figure out like, okay, I shouldn't do this again. But toxic shame is when you're so ashamed that you start overthinking, what is everyone thinking? You start judging yourself. You're worried, you're so worried about those things that you don't show up authentically in the world or in your life. So that's actually one of the biggest symptoms of complex PTSD is toxic shame, relationship issues that carry on, because
Wow.
it becomes very familiar to live in under this stress response. It's very familiar to live under the toxic stress response. I don't know if you want me to explain what that is. Do you want me to tell you what that is?
Yeah, no, I do. I'm interested. I want to know all of it, everything.
So So the stress response is a normal response and a very important response that we have, which is the fight or flight response, fight, flight, freeze, and that we need that. We need that to survive, and to alert us when we're in danger, and to put our body into hyper focus. I'm going to survive in this moment. If a bear is chasing us, or if something dangerous is actually happens to us. But toxic stress is when it's ongoing and it never gets turned off. So like what you're describing about the childhood stuff, and or children that are raised in an environment where you're getting sexually abused at night, there's not enough food, you go to school and you're getting bullied, then the teacher calls your house and says he's not doing what he needs to do, then your parent beats you up because you're not doing what you're supposed to do, as if you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to do when you're so stressed. So there are many kids that live like that, and then they live in like poverty stricken type of area where there's also violence in the community. So imagine how many kids live like that, yet they're expected to function properly and they're just developing. So the toxic stress response is that kid, his stress response never turns off.
Holy
So
smokes.
most people
That's
have that turned on when you need it. But when it becomes the way of being, then it's really impactful to children more than adults, because your whole body's developing, your immune system is developing, your hormonal system is developing, your brain is developing, your body's developing, everything's developing, and everything gets impacted when you're living under those conditions.
wow. So, in a sense, if you're growing up from a kid to an adult, in that whole time, if you're experiencing that trauma, right, of like not feeling safe, basically, all the things that have happened or could happen to you, eventually, once you get to a certain place in your life where you're an adult, and then you experience PTSD, right? Maybe you're in the military, or maybe you're in an abusive relationship, or maybe something really horrible happens to you, even a car accident or something like that, right? You combine those two, now you're going to develop other things from that. And
Well,
there's
it compounds.
it,
It
it
compounds.
compounds, right? And so how does someone get treated for that? Like, you treat it, right? Is that what you do? Is there a medication that you can take while being treated, or how do you recover from that? Or how do you
So,
I mean
so I don't want to. So this is really important. What I'm going to say right now, this is not a pathology. Yes, we have a response to the environment, which is the complex PTSD. We're
okay.
not born with we're not born with PTSD, and we're definitely not born with complex PTSD. Even though we might be, depending on our mother's stress level while we're pregnant, we might be, or maybe a child being born addicted already because the mother is using drugs or whatever it is. But it's not a pathology. It's an adaptive response to a very abnormal environment. So the issue is when the person doesn't look for healing, or it's not available. That's where it continues on, and it layers, it compounds one on top of the other. And you keep mentioning the military, and actually the being at war could also give you complex PTSD. So those are the two ways to get complex PTSD, is by growing up in that environment, or a lot of military people get complex PTSD too, depending on their experiences.
So the way to heal it is to do what?
So healing comes by, it's not just the mind. The healing comes by self-awareness.
Mm,
So it
okay.
starts with self-awareness. So the reason why I was saying that it's not a, let's not think of it as a pathology, and because there's so many people that experience this, it's actually the opposite of a pathology, even though it's
Okay.
so painful. So I really don't, this is a little controversial, but I don't really push for someone, my clients, for example, or the clients that are at my agency, to seek medication unless they absolutely have to. So if doing the healing work is so stressful that you're unable to do it, then you might need medication. And I don't provide medication. I'll refer to a psychiatrist. And then the psychiatrist could determine that. And a lot of times, there are people who need the medication just so they could do the therapy. But then there's also the group of people who take medication but don't do therapy. And medication isn't meant to be a forever thing. And for many people who, for example, were misdiagnosed. I'm going to call it a misdiagnosis. When you're like in your 20s, you go to the doctor, the psychiatrist, and they diagnose you with a list of things, which as soon as I see that in my office, I'm like, okay, that person has complex PTSD, because usually someone who's not trauma informed doesn't know how to diagnose you. So they'll give you generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, depression, and they give you just like a whole
Just a whole
soup
abundance
of,
of things.
yeah. And that's for me, that's a red flag of, okay, this person has complex PTSD. And usually almost 100% of the time, that's what it is. So it starts with self-awareness. It starts with talking about what happened, becoming aware of how the event impacted you. And that alone is so
Significant.
it's such a big deal. Like when I have clients that have already had a lot of therapy and psychiatry and other things, and usually session 1 or session 2, this is the first thing I do. So as a trauma informed therapist, we ask the hard questions at the beginning. We don't wait until 6 months later to find out that you were sexually abused, that all these things happened to you. So I asked day one and day two. And then as they start speaking and as they start realizing through our conversation that, okay, this is actually everything you're going through is 100% a normal response to what you went through. You're actually normal, because it would be very abnormal to go through all of this stuff and just be a fully functioning person who doesn't have, emotional dysregulation, who doesn't have conflicting thoughts, who doesn't have all those things. That wouldn't make sense. What makes sense is you went through all of this, and here you are with carrying all this baggage, all these invisible bags that no one could see. You might look perfect, but you're carrying all these little bags of stuff that you've never really worked through or let go of. So it really starts with self-awareness. And then a lot of therapy, out there only really focus on symptom management, just like most of Western medicine. You go to the doctor and they just give you medication. Trauma informed therapy is root cause therapy. So if you go to a functional doctor, they're going to look for the root cause of, what's going on with you physically. So that's the same way that trauma therapy is that we look for root cause. We don't just try to reduce your symptoms and that's it. And I created a therapy model that I don't do it at my agency, but I do it with my private clients, which is, I call it transformational therapy, which is, I don't just stop at reducing your symptoms. Now we need to discover your greatness. Now we need to see what you were born for. Now we need to alchemize. That's why I call myself a trauma alchemist. We need to alchemize all that trauma into and pain into your purpose, which is what you're doing, what I'm doing. We already alchemized our pain, and we're showing up. We're showing people in the world the good news. The good news is, what do we see on the news all the time? We see the guy who went in the church or in the school and shot up everyone, and he had this trauma history. But they don't show people like us that have been through hell and back, and we're doing good for the world, and we're awakening the world, we're raising consciousness. So once you do the awareness, then we raise consciousness of who you truly are, of the authentic you that you didn't even know existed because you were too busy surviving.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
That's I think that's where I started seeing some of my repair, because I kind of like briefly told you my story, over the phone or whatever when we were first starting this, and I was saying that when I was around 36, 37, I started developing anxiety out of nowhere. Yeah. Right, and I think it's just because I never addressed some of the things that happened to me in my previous, younger life. I never just evolved from that. I just going to tuck it away and just keep trucking along. I got to be the best version of me. I got to, make money. That's all I cared about, was making money. And I was blind to my children. I was blind to my family. I went through 2 divorces. I couldn't see or hear anything. It was just make money. Don't be a loser. Because if you're a loser, then you don't have anything to show for. At least if you're successful and you make money, you can deal with everything then. That's what I always thought was number one.
Right.
But until I started figuring out that I needed to focus on my mindset, myself, and my self-care, and take care of myself and put myself first, and started doing that because it was just everyone else before me. Problem was I was putting everyone first, but I wasn't healed. So they didn't really get a better version of me. They got the bare minimum. And so when they were getting the bare minimum, it's like that was there. It's like, but there was no value. You know what I'm saying? It's like there was just no value in my presence. It was like, yeah, he's my dad. Yeah, he's there. Or he's my partner, but he's there. But there was no value. And then until I started getting in touch with myself and started identifying things that I was doing wrong. And then, eventually I got more into faith, and my faith grew because of that. and I made myself more consciously aware, right? And
Right.
I didn't even know of what you were saying. I feel like maybe I've already done a lot of the things that you're talking about just
Yes.
by listening to podcasts, listening to stories of people, like trying to find my most authentic self. And I remember the time though when I started trying to be myself. I think anyone that was close to me, and I mean everyone that was close to me, turned a blind eye to me. Like, who are you? Like, everyone struck at me. Everyone attacked me. Everybody. When I started
Yeah.
becoming authentic and my voice started speaking out, as soon as you start speaking, that's when they try to shut you up. And that was what
Right.
I didn't want because I knew that as soon as they started trying to shut me up, it was because I was doing something to them. And the thing that I was doing to them, they could say, "Oh, well, you were this person a long time ago. You're still that person." I mean, that's the version of them that they don't like to hear from. That's coming out of
Right.
them. And so I knew that because I was taught that. And I was like, you just got to keep being authentic, keep being you, keep putting it out there. And as long as I kept putting it out there, I kept evolving, I kept changing, my confidence kept rising. Before you knew it, I was taking these steps. But I like how you said that you have to be the most authentic you. You have to find a way to first make it conscious, make it real, find out what it is, vocalize it to someone else. Because telling my story to someone else actually helped me. That's what helped me. And I didn't just tell it to one person, I publicized it. I
Right.
publicized it. That was the first step, was to publicize my dad. And I didn't just publicize it. I showed a picture of my dad and me
I saw it.
together. Yeah,
I
I
saw
know.
it.
Yeah, I know. I know. I saw that you liked it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and this is me releasing it. And I cried so hard that day. I'll never imagine you. I don't even understand if you could imagine the pain I was feeling. And I cried so hard that my chest was hurting so bad that I thought I was having a heart attack. And
Was
then
it released?
it was a release. Yeah, it wasn't pain. It was like relief. Like, but I don't
Yeah.
think it was like pain. I think it was like I was out of breath. Like I was instantly exhausted. I don't even know how to explain it. But I had this
Yeah.
moment of just clarity. I let it go and I shut off my phone. I even turned it off. I just shut it off so I wouldn't look at the post to see if anyone had noticed it because I was so afraid of certain people seeing it, you know? And at the time, I had people that, you know, had known me for being, you know, involved in bad things, criminal things at the time, you know, that I was involved with, you know. And I was just like, well, what if these people see me? What are they going to say? You know, I'm not with these guys anymore. I'm a different person now, or I'm trying to be. What are they going to say? You know, what are the people that are the closest, my best friends, going to say? Are they still going to be my friends? You know, what are the past partners that I've had going to say? You know, they don't like me. They're going to have that as more ammo. And then I just decided to myself, I was like, well, you know what? I was like, I don't even like me right now, anyways. So I don't give a shit. I'm just going to say it. I mean, they don't like me now. They're not going to like me then either. Cool. I'm just going to tell it. But then when I did it and I actually went back to look at it, I remember the responses I had were like crazy. I had more comments than likes. I had just like a crazy amount of comments. Like people were just saying, I'm so proud of you. I love you. And blah, blah, blah. And I was just overwhelmed with that. It was like almost like my truth set me free. And
Yes.
yeah. And even to this
Because
day,
you become
like I still
magnetic.
tell.
You become magnetic when you're authentic.
Yeah. And I
And look,
become, I think, and we were talking about this previously, and I was telling you, like, I feel like now I'm just too truthful. I just tell everyone about my dad. I'm like, from the beginning, I'm like proud of it. I'm like, yep, that's what my dad is. You know, yep, that's what happened to me. This is what it is. At the end of the day, you're going to find out eventually, whether it be now or in 5 years. I mean, I'd rather tell you now and you decide if you still like me or not.
if you think about it, he's being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
He's being his true self. You know, whatever he thinks that is, he's being authentic.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that more than ever now because I never understood how impactful it was to be authentic because even I wasn't authentic. I was trying to be
Right.
something I wasn't. I was trying to be this person I just wasn't, you know? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you touch on some really good points. I was writing as you were saying,
oh, okay.
because everything that you described is that you actually had an identity shift. So you
Oh,
weren't conscious of how you were doing it, but you shifted your identity from survival self to the more authentic you. And the more you become authentic, the more the more we stop shaming ourselves, judging ourselves, and the more we give ourselves permission to show up as we truly are, that's what a more healed you looks like.
mm,
So it's directly correlated. Like people say, how do you know you're healed? You're authentic.
Mm.
How do you know you're not healed? You're not authentic. that's,
Do you hear that?
it's
That's
that simple
crazy.
sometimes. If you're not authentic, what happens? We're living out of our ego. So in my transformational therapy, it's basically a 5-stage process, but the last stage is when we're living out of our soul, when we have consciousness of our eternal being and our purpose and all of that. So the survival self is completely out of touch with their soul. They're living out of their ego. They're living out of fear and survival. And what do I have to do next? And purely not authentic. When you're living from your soul, you're authentic. You're who you truly are. You don't need approval and validation from others because you have approval from your higher self. And your higher self is connected to the divine, to God. So it ends up with spirituality. All healing is spiritual. When we're healing, yes, we're healing our human experience, but what we're elevating is our soul.
Mm.
That makes sense?
That's powerful.
Yeah, I love it.
You know,
So
honestly,
exciting.
and it's funny because a lot of people talk about God these days. They talk about being religious, and a lot of people are making transformations towards that. And I feel like, wouldn't you agree? Like nowadays, it seems like a lot more people are into religion. Like, yeah. And I mean, you could say whatever you want. Maybe it's just because of the times. It's harder these days to live. It's a little bit more of a struggle, but I believe that these times are being bringing people closer to God because people are having to be more authentic. I think and if you're fake, I think people are like more aware of that now, especially on social media. Like you can't be popular on social media if you're fake. Like people are going to
Right.
catch on eventually. And I mean you just won't grow your following. The more authentic I've become, the more out there, the faster my following's grown.
Right.
Because people automatically know who you are. They don't have to guess anymore. Because if I like someone that talks about, I don't know, the color blue all the time. And then I talk to someone that talks about the color red all the time, but I really like the color blue, but they don't really like the color blue. They like the color red. Well, as soon as I start seeing that they're really showing that they're wearing the color red all the time, I'm going to assume that they're really not into the color blue, just as an idea. Like,
Yes.
and I'm going to automatically shift. I'm like, you're freaking fake. You're a liar. And it's not going to grow. And then I'm going to tell one person, it's going to tell one person, and I'm going to be like, yeah, this person's fake. And then before you know it, you have a whole team of people that are against you that think you're fake. And everything that you're putting out there is just a waste of your energy. So you might as well just be real.
So think of it this way. When I always say, when you hear someone's story, you stop judging them because then they make sense. So think of it this way. Like when we see people being fake on social media or whatever, we could train ourselves to get curious and think, I wonder what happened to them. Because if they're being fake, that means they're living out of their survival self.
Ooh.
They need validation, they need
Ooh.
approval. So if we
They're
shift to
living out of
that,
their survival self.
yes, their survival
That's
self, which
so
is
freaking
so
powerful.
healing.
So when people are
Fakeness,
being fake, they're living out of their survival self. I want to say that because I want to make a clip out of this one.
yeah,
That's
they're
crazy.
unhealed.
Huh?
Yeah, they're unhealed. That's an unhealed version of themselves. If they did healing,
So
like,
so
yeah,
not to interrupt you, but I'm curious. So like I don't know, like I'm trying to resonate this with everybody. I'm trying to put this on a platform where everyone could be like, well, no, I'm healed. I'm just very not confident. But the way that I'm acting, this fake stuff that you see online, like this version of me that you think is real, but it's not. Well, yeah, I know I'm not fully, I am healed. I'm fine. I grew up in a great household, but the person that I'm showing is the person that I would just want to associate myself with everyone with. I want to be this person that everyone likes. Is that still an
right. So
unhealed person?
yeah, they just have a narrative going on in their head to support what they're doing. But just because
Oh.
we have a narrative doesn't mean it's real, doesn't mean it's true. It's just it's rationalizing. We rationalize stuff that it's unconscious. It's not something that we're conscious of. We just say that it makes us feel good about why we're making the choices that we're making, but the truth is you're unhealed. I'll stand on that all day. I have many people that come in and they say, oh no, nothing has happened to me. And then after I do a full assessment on them, I'm like, look at everything that happened to you. A lot of people say nothing happened to them, and that's usually not true. It's usually not true. I would say 10% of people haven't experienced have had only maybe one adverse childhood experience, but the majority of the people have had between 1 and 4.
Wow.
I've had 10. There's an actual test, 10 questions. My score is 10. 10 is unheard of. But that's why I had complex PTSD. That's why all of this has happened to me as well. But I found a way to transform it. And it wasn't through therapy, by the way. The way that I transformed it was through self-development. It was through Tony Robbins. He was the first person that I started studying with and going to his events. And that just, I went to the same event like 4 times. So it's a layering. It doesn't happen overnight. It's just you increase consciousness little by little, and then you have to be courageous. Without courage, you're not going to heal. Healing takes a lot of courage.
Wow.
And because what's the opposite of courage? Fear. So if we're not courageous, we're living in fear. If we're living in fear, we're living out of our survival self. Courage is proactive. First of all, you can't even have courage without fear in the room. Fear is in the room. Fear has to be in the room for us to be courageous, right?
Right.
So I think I was addicted to fear. I think there was a time there that I was addicted, and it still shows up. It's ugly as still shows up in my life. And then I know that I need support.
I feel like a lot of people, in a sense, don't want problems or fear. I feel like I need that. I feel like that's still like that state of chaos that I live in. I still feel like, I mean, that's why I own a moving company, right? Because a moving company has tons of problems, tons of things that happen, last minute stuff, and there's always something you have to put out.
Breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on with the internet. But what do you say to people that like live in problems and in fear all the time? Like they're just constantly wanting it. Is there anyone like that you've met that just want that constantly? Oh, it's on your side. Can you hear me? Maybe. Okay, so what were you saying? We're live.
You're right when you cut off. You were saying that you enjoy living in a state of fear. That's where I heard you cut off.
Yeah.
But so there's a proactive way of putting yourself in a state of fear, challenge, but then there's a reactive way. So you could be reacting to your internal irrational fears that are coming from your past history, but it is actually healthy and proactive to put yourself in a situation where you're challenging fear, like, for example, starting a podcast. That's a scary thing to do.
Yeah.
That's very challenging. So that's very proactive. That's a positive way of you're choosing your fear at that point. You see what I'm saying? So that's proactive. That's very healthy. That's like going to the gym. Why do we put ourselves through hell at the gym and, do progressive overload? Because we're progressively helping our body to grow. So when we do the fear on purpose and we keep leveling up and challenging ourselves with new things, then we're growing mentally, spiritually, and in all these ways. And then the more we do that, the more we realize, like, wow, what else could I do? Then you start getting excited. Then we transform fear into excitement, and we stop calling it fear. Now we're like, oh man, this is so exciting. I remember the last time. You pretty much create evidence for yourself that you could do hard things.
Wow. And then you prove to yourself that you're basically a stronger person than you actually thought you were.
Stronger, smarter, resilient, all those things. Yeah.
I like that. So what about people that are trying to heal? Okay, in a sense. But so like you would think that obviously healing from traumas, it's possible, right? It's possible to heal. Because I remember you said something different. You said that you can't ever be fully healed.
Well, okay. So yes, it's possible to heal and be on the healing journey and evolve. But who am I to say you're healed? See, I don't really like when people, therapists and influencers promote, oh, you could fully heal, because that's putting like a ceiling on you.
Right.
I think we could live a healed life. I think we could live proactively. I think we could do things that continues, for example, what happens to the person that thinks they're healed and then all of a sudden they're in a new relationship, a year down the road, something happens, they get triggered, and then they're like, oh my God, I thought I healed. And if I was healed, this wouldn't have happened to me. Now I feel like crap. Now I feel like a failure. That's what I don't like about telling people you could fully heal. You could live a very healed life and continue healing and growing and evolving. So for me, I equate evolution, our personal evolution, with healing. But just because you're at your most healed state doesn't mean that something can come up a year from now that will trigger you and bring you back to a place that that you were once at. The difference is that if you're on the healing journey, you won't go as deep or as wide into it. You won't go as deep, meaning you'll feel sadness, but you won't go into a major depression where you want to kill yourself or you feel worthless and you're not getting out of bed. And you won't go as wide, which is you might feel sadness for a week, 24 hours, 48 hours, but you won't go into a 3 month super deep depression where you became non-functional and you fell back on all the things that you were supposed to be doing. So that's healing. See what I'm saying? That's healing. But I don't want to put a, that's like saying, for example, when someone says, wow, you're such a overachiever. That's not a compliment. You know what I mean? That's you're putting a ceiling on me. You're telling me that you thought I was only going to go here because I went here. I'm an overachiever. That tells me what you think of me. So that's the same idea with telling someone, oh, you're healed. No, it's a spiral. And actually, every time you get triggered and every time you go over the same thing, you're showing up and you're dealing with it from an elevated place because of all the healing you've done. That's why you're not going as deep and as wide. So I really want to I try to help as many people to get off the hook of perfection. It's about progress. It's not about perfection. It's not about being perfectly healed, because that again is survival self. I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't want to be the survival self. I want to be the blooming self. I want to be the thriving self. I want to be the self that is like I'm constantly trying to see how far I could take it. How far could I go in this lifetime? Like how far could I go? What could I do? How many things could I accomplish? You know what I mean? I'm not putting a ceiling on it.
I like how you
No,
said
I don't
that.
put a ceiling on
Yeah. No, I like how you said that. I think ceilings are something that it's like almost like committing your end in advance. It's like when you see a ceiling on
it, right?
something, you're already kind of like, okay, I got to reach that or else I'm a failure, in a sense. And I like the idea of progress too. Progress over perfection, right? Is that what they say?
Yes.
One interesting one. I had a couple questions for you in relationships, and we'll go into parenting, and then we'll wrap it up. How does childhood trauma affect adult relationships? And like talk about patterns in that too, how people keep repeating unsafe and healthy patterns. Because I know that's common in relationships. And how does it make people being pushed away? Like how does trauma push people away in relationships? So I feel like a lot of people have unhealed trauma, but I'm curious how all that like affects a relationship.
Yeah, and that's such a great question. I'm so happy you asked that, because the number one wound of all trauma, doesn't matter what the trauma is, and this is my personal opinion, the number one wound is abandonment. So it doesn't matter what happened to you, at the end that child feels alone and abandoned.
Even
So
at
that
43,
abandonment, and then it continues on. then
it never
then
goes
we
away.
continue to experience, not experience, we continue to create, if we're living out of our victim self, what we do is we continue to create experiences that reinforce the abandonment wound, which makes us right. So it makes us right
Wow.
to think like, I'm alone in the world. I can't trust it. I used to, you know what I used to say when I was like in my 20s and my teens? I used to say I was born alone and I'll die alone. Like this. I used to do this and everything. I was born alone, I'll die alone. And I thought that made me, what you said earlier about being tough resonated with me too, because that was my way of surviving, was being tough, and being strong and all of that. So I used to say that, but that was my survival self speaking. I don't want to die alone. So that's not true. I would have never said that as a child. But the abandonment wound is big, because imagine, like, think about it. No matter what you went through, you felt alone in those moments. I know I did. I felt so alone, and everyone that comes to therapy for trauma, um, we're dealing with two things: your abandonment wound and grief, because you're grieving the mother you didn't have. You're grieving the father you didn't have. You're grieving the life you didn't have. If you were molested or assaulted sexually as a child, you're grieving that part too, your virginity. So sometimes there's some people who need corrective surgery because of the things that happened to them. So you're grieving the integrity of your body. You're grieving the childhood you never had. So there's so much grief. And in that grief, there's also so much abandonment. So as adults, what do? We start our 20s and we have like the knee-jerk reaction of wanting to create perfection against what happened to us. So in our way to correct perfection, we subconsciously choose the same types of people, same personalities that we grew up with in our subconscious mind, trying to correct it. So we're like, I'm gonna, of course, this isn't a conscious conversation. Subconsciously, we find the same people so that they could choose us, and then somehow we're healed because we're like, you see, I was finally chosen. You see, I was finally respected. This is all subconscious talk, by the way, but we continue to repeat patterns that then make that trauma compound, and we create evidence of all the stuff that we've been through, as opposed to creating evidence in the other direction. Wow. Of being authentic. Okay, if I show up authentically, and actually you said that as well, which is once you start growing, once you start being authentic, like Surgeon General's warning is, you're gonna lose people. you're gonna lose people because those people could no longer vibe with you. They're no longer at your energetic level. You attract people or keep people that are in your same vibration. So when you elevate, there's no more alignment.
I always say it's a contraction phase. That's what I use. I say it's a contraction phase when you're at that moment, because that's why you feel solitude. That's why you feel alone. Like that. Because if you're consistently elevating, you're going to feel alone for a really long time until you find your place and you middle out, because it's hard for people to find you until they start seeing you. But that's why social media is so great, because as soon as you're on it and people start seeing it, you have millions of people that can find you. Versus your little county, a few 100,000 people, maybe you run into a few hundred people a day. You're eventually better off being online and being out there so that you can get that fulfillment that you need. For example, you meet someone in Florida, or you meet someone in Idaho or wherever, they might be at that level you're at, and they're a little lost, because the higher you elevate, the less people that operate at that level, right? Just like the same thing with people that are financially stable versus people that are worth millions, people that are worth billions and now trillions. Yeah. But
I agree.
It's just, there's different levels of people, and at those levels, and I had done this thing with a financial guy one time. He was talking about the level difference between making $1 million and 3 is pretty easy. Now from 3 to 5 is more difficult. From 5 to 10 is even more difficult. From 10 to 20, then it goes from 20 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, then 500 to $1 million. You see the spread? It becomes bigger. Yeah. So the levels that you grow take a little bit longer for the next jump, but the jumps take up that much more space. So technically, when you're a person, and I've noticed this, like at the level that I'm at, I feel like, it's like I'm doing so many things, and my time, it's like I'm trying to buy back my time now because I'm so busy, and I have so many different things between my kids, social media, podcasts, businesses. Everyone needs a little piece of me. I have to figure out where my time is better off placed, and I have to be selfless on that and not selfish, because everyone deserves a little bit more of my time until I get to a different phase where I can't do certain things. I need to block those out to go get this other bigger thing. And that's when I go through another contraction phase. And I've noticed that the people that were around me, and I just noticed this differently, the people that have been around me my entire life, people that have known me for 20, 30 years, those are the people that are getting the most, I'm getting the most scrutiny from. Yeah, siblings, former family, just people I thought were in bed with me for years. Those are the people that I'm having the most difficult with right now, difficulties. And I think it's just an identity shift and change. And like you were saying, I think it's that they're stuck on your history of who you were. And then if they haven't elevated to your level or even close to it, they don't understand it. So they just become confused. And that's what I think level change is confusion, right? They choose confusion over clarity. Like almost like, wait a minute, hold on. He's doing great. I'm going to promote him. Like all these strangers online. You ever see that video? I posted a video online. I don't know if you saw it. A long time ago, it was funny. It was like me doing the podcast, and then It was like it's like all the people closest to you, and it was them going like, "Oh my God, him again? He's doing great again." And then all of a sudden, it turns into like these strangers, doing funny jumping up and down, looking all happy for you. And it's the truth. It's
Yeah,
like the random stranger is the person that's basically doing what you're doing, and they feel the same way you do. They just don't know you. But that doesn't mean that they don't approve of what you're doing. The people
yeah,
that don't approve of you is because they know who you really were. Keyword. They're not comfortable with the identity, the old version of you. Because they're like, wait a minute, hold on. No. You don't get to change like that because I haven't changed yet. No. I'm not ready to change. Wait, you're doing
right,
better? And you're saying you're a different person? No. You went from Chris to Richard? No. Mm-mm. No. You're still Chris to me. And they choose that because Chris is more comfortable for them, right?
right.
To believe because that's at their level.
Yeah, it's a reflection. You're a reflection of the work they haven't done, and so from their survival self, they
I like that.
criticize, they judge, they do all of that. And so our job is to have compassion. Right, right after you get pissed off, then you you choose compassion. You have to choose compassion. You choose compassion. You choose to say, okay, let me get curious. Let me get curious and compassionate. And then you start realizing, okay, it's because they haven't done the work. And why haven't they done the work? Because it has to do with like clarity, like what you said, clarity, courage. It's hard. It's hard to do the work because you do lose a lot of people, and a lot of people know this, so they choose not to do the work to keep what they have.
Mm.
So when you start thinking it,
When you say
when you
what they
start
have,
thinking
what do you
of
mean by that?
it,
What do you mean by what they have? Like what they have is in like they're just comfortable? They're comfortable like in their own
well, yeah,
circle?
it could be comfortable, but most of the time it's relationships. People that are married, and they elevate above their spouse or their significant other, either because they stop using drugs, they stop doing negative behaviors, or they study something new, or they start putting themselves out there. If the partner's not doing that, they could get scared, jealous, whatever else. So it threatens the relationship, and a lot of times that's very common. That's very common. So that's one of the reasons why people start their journey and then they go back,
Mm.
because they don't want to lose their spouse or I'm talking about adults. They don't want to lose that. um and that's one of the choices that we have to make.
So
This is a choice we make when we're elevating.
so people that push so we're making these choices and we're elevating, right? And if you choose to do that, but you're like, because trauma can make someone push away, right? And make people who love them the most, right, feel that way. But like, how does someone push someone away and then deal with building trust again after betrayal? Because I know that's like a big thing. Like people tend to go, okay, I'm going to push you away and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do something else, right? Maybe it's find a new partner or whatever because they're getting too close to you and it's easier to self-sabotage because you can predict the future, right? So then they go off and then they're on their own and then they're trying to find somebody else, but the relationship's like over but not over. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not together, but you're still together kind of thing. And then people experience betrayal in that. How do you overcome that? How do you build trust with that? How do you rebuild it? Is that even possible? So I feel like a
Well,
lot of people experience that in relationships.
rebuild what? Rebuild the relationship.
Yeah. Once trust has been lost.
So yeah, well, trust and betrayal could get lost, and then you could rebuild, but you both have to be on the same page. There has to be a lot of clarity, like transparency. There has to be a lot of transparency, um, and stuff that most people are not willing to do. And also, it depends also on the betrayal and how many times have you been betrayed by the same person. Um, so it just really depends on that. Or if you're with someone who has very selfish qualities, which we usually tend to call narcissists. I really don't even like to say that, but we tend to call it that. Then it's really about looking at yourself. I rather look at the individual who got betrayed. What about you kept you in this relationship? Because usually there's other things that are happening prior to the betrayal. The betrayal is probably something you found out about, but it was probably already happening along with other behaviors that might actually be more significant. Maybe you were being treated wrong. Maybe you were being abused. Maybe you were being abused in multiple ways. Maybe you were being neglected.
So the betrayal was
Maybe,
just a thing on top of everything. It was like a little
yeah,
cherry on
the
top.
betrayal there. It's not common that in a great relationship, there's a sudden betrayal. That's not really common. There's usually a lot of underneath stuff happening, and then there's a betrayal. But then a lot of people just want to talk about the betrayal, but then there's all this other stuff under, that picture of the pair of the ice, with the water. What is it called? The iceberg.
Oh
And you
yeah,
only
yeah,
see the
under the
top.
water. I've seen that. Yeah.
So at the top, people only want to talk about, oh, the betrayal, but then there's so much underneath. And sometimes it could also be, and I'm not here saying that it's okay to betray someone else, but it could also be that you are doing things to neglect your significant other. And I'm not saying it's okay to go in and betray someone, but it's, you have to look at yourself. Why were you putting up with this? What were you doing? There's so many
I
questions.
think a lot of the common things, and this is a misconception, I think there's a lot of things, between male and female, right? So it's usually like the woman wasn't getting what she needed from the man. She warned the man a lot. The woman became, sexless in the relationship, right? Wasn't giving something to the man. I'm just using that as an example. Maybe it was like a sex issue. And then the man went off and betrayed her, right? After he warned her multiple times, and the man just ended up becoming like not emotional. He just didn't care anymore. Now he's looked at as like the betrayer, right? But in reality, the man was asking for things for a long time to the woman, like telling him his feelings. Hey, I need it, But every time he was mentioning it, it was like, oh, all you want to do is have sex, or, be like, no, I just need this, and I'm wondering, like, how do we get to that point? And then it turned into something else. I've seen that being a big part of betrayal. I think that's like been a number of things. So when I talk to guys, because guys reach out to me randomly and online about this, and I go, oh, I'm trying to get over this, and my wife wasn't sleeping with me for 2-3 weeks at a time. And then, obviously I slipped up and I did this. I had a couple guys reach out to me about just that in itself. And it was like almost like they were like leading them to like literally like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do this for you. And then the man finds a weak spot and then he jumps into it. And I've seen it happen with women too, where it's complete opposite. The man's working, just not into it. Maybe his testosterone's low. I don't know, something. He's just not into it, or he just doesn't have a connection. And the woman goes off and does what she wants. I've seen it on both sides. Betrayal is a big thing in relationships, but I noticed that people repeat the same unhealthy patterns all the time in relationships. Why do they do that? Like, why do they do that?
It's the same reason that I said earlier, which is what you also touched on it too, which is just being so familiar with the same dynamics, the same patterns, and being unconscious. So that's why healing is so important, is that you become conscious of the unconscious. You become conscious of your patterns. You become conscious of their patterns. And in that little space, it's like a little window opening that you're conscious. Now you're like, ooh, I see. Now I get to choose. Now I get to choose something differently. And so that's the process of healing, is when you start opening up consciousness. It's like if I turn off the lights in the room and I tell you, go find the keys on the other end of the room, but I'm in the middle, or there's other people standing in the middle, you're gonna walk in the darkness and hit some people and hurt them, not on purpose, but you're gonna hurt them because you're in the dark. But if I turn on the light even a little bit, that little space, you're able to see, and you're able to not hurt
Navigate around
yourself or
people.
others.
Right.
And that's consciousness. That's expanding consciousness. So a big part of healing is expanding consciousness, so that you could, in that consciousness, you get to choose differently. So that's the next step also in it's actually, for me, it's the third step. The
So
third
it's
step is,
awareness, right? It's number one.
yeah, awareness. The next one that I have is self-development,
Self
because you have to
development.
develop. We don't have communication skills if we grew up in a home where our parents were hitting each other, screaming at each other, cursing each other out, not speaking to each other, disappearing, stonewalling, leaving for a week. There is no communication. So those are the patterns we learn. If we're in a home where there's a lot of domestic violence or any type of violence, then we learn, when we get angry, we hit or we punch walls. And then, for example, a woman who is raised in that environment will very easily end up with a man who rages, who punches walls, who is just another unhealed soul. It's just another unhealed person having a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old. So when you're unhealed, you find other unhealed people to play out the same stuff. And subconsciously, you're trying to create a new ending to the story than the ones that you lived, but you end up repeating the same pattern. The only real way to change the ending is to heal yourself, elevate yourself, and then meet people at that level, so that it's the shortcut. We subconsciously believe the shortcut is we're going to, we're going to heal ourselves. We have so much in common. We have so much trauma in common, and we're going to heal each other. But that usually doesn't work. What usually happens is that you end up playing out the trauma again because you only have the same skills that you had from before. You didn't shift your identity. Like what you were saying, you were describing a shift in identity. When you shift it's like when when you shift your identity, you can't really go back to who you were. And if you do go back, it'll be temporarily, and you're like, what am I doing here? I've already gone past this. This isn't part of my new character. And you
I
go
noticed
back
that's
to
hard. I noticed that's hard. Even like just with me, like hanging out at the bars or going out hang out with like some old friends or something. Like I feel weird around them. I honestly do. Not that I don't appreciate them or like them anymore. I just feel weird. I feel like I'm just different. Like I'm around them and I feel like almost less than in a way. Almost like I lost value just by hanging around them. Not because they're less value. It's just because of what they're doing is less valuable. And I just think to myself, wait a minute, they're at the bar and I just want to be at home reading this book. Like they're at the bar and I want to be making a podcast. They're at the bar and I want to be online, like talking about healing and helping other people grow. I mean, they're at the bar, but I want to be like forwarding and like making new videos and reels and like trying to like do this and like I'm over that shit. Like I'm going to go into the bar and talk about other people and about what their problems are all day long and about how they're sitting in their problems. Like, no, I don't want that. Like, what am I going to learn from that? Be around a bunch of smokers and people that are just not healthy? Like, what am I doing? No.
Yeah.
But that leads in my next one, which is actually to do with parenting. And I know there's a lot of people like this, but how can parents avoid passing trauma on to their children?
Yeah, healing.
Yeah, right? I was going to say, yeah, just basically like everything you just said, right?
Yeah, healing. And it doesn't always, unfortunately, your first child usually is the one that has the most unhealed version of you as a parent. And so they're the ones that get more of that. But if we could even slash it to 50% of what we received, we're already doing better with our children.
I like that.
I lived in 17 houses by the time I was 16.
Holy smokes.
My kids have lived in one house their whole life, so that's one thing. My kids and I have an amazing relationship, but my older sons had a different version of me, a different mom than my daughter who's 13, a very different mom. I repeated a lot of things that my mom did and my dad did, and I thought I never want to do that, but then I repeated it, and then I'm like, why am I repeating? Why am I doing this?
It's stored in your subconscious, right?
Yeah, the pattern and the pattern recognition too, because what are we doing? We're recognizing when we stay in places, then it's so familiar and it's just pattern recognition. So what's a pattern too are habits. So what you just described about the bar and all of that, you have brand new habits. Your brand new habits together, there are clusters of habits that create a pattern. So you might have a pattern of what you do now on your off time, which is very different than the bar.
That's what they say. Show me your habits, I'll show you your future.
Exactly. That's exactly. It's so true. So we really a big thing with the self-development is developing brand new habits, because your habits are who you are. You know what I mean?
So this
that's how you get described.
Yeah, and so like, what about the people that have already made these mistakes as a parent? Is it too late to change?
No, of course not, because look, I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes with my sons, and they, I have a great relationship with them. And we give them the gift. Look, it's my dad too. I'll give you an example of my dad. My dad was a monster. He was a scary monster. I told him that one time, and I think I hurt his feelings when I said that, but I didn't mean it to hurt him. But he was so scary that when he would come home and my brother and I would hear the door, we would like in a second run to the room, cover ourselves, and pretend we were sleeping, because it wasn't like, oh, dad is home. It was like fear. It was like the most scariest feeling when my dad came home. So we would run and hide. But now he's so different. So he gave me the gift of transformation.
Oh, wow.
He's an example for me of people could change if they choose to. People could change with information, because maybe like, I would say like 15 years ago, I gave him that book, The Secret. I gave him The Secret. And that book completely changed. He was walking around with that like if it was the Bible, and he
Wow.
was sending me messages like, "Wow, I love you so much. Like you've changed me. This book has changed." And then from there, he went to the Bible, and he started reading the Bible and preaching, to me, and just he got so consumed with it, and all of that transformed him. So that's proof that if he transformed, then anyone could transform. If I transformed, anyone could transform. If you transformed, anyone could transform. So we're like the good news. You know what I'm saying? We're the good news for people that are living in darkness, because we share our stories and we share, if I was able to come from living in 17 houses, getting beat up by my brother, having to escape Florida. My cousin had to escape Florida too because we couldn't stay here with my brother anymore. My brother was dangerous. And so if we were able through choices change our lives, then anyone could. It's choice and
I
decision.
do, and I
And
believe that, and I believe that with all my heart. I feel like there's a lot of parents that say they love their kids, right? But I'm going to be honest with you. Like a long time ago, I was different with my first daughter than I was with my second, than I was with my third. I evolved as a person, and they will all have different versions of me. My last daughter experienced the best version of me. My second daughter
exactly.
experiences a really good version of me, but she saw a little bit of the bad. And then my first daughter saw the worst version of me.
Right.
Up until like the last 20%, she started seeing some healing happen. But I think that the best gift you can give your kid is the the chance to show them that you've changed, right? That you're a different version. Because at the
Yeah.
end of
So
the
now
day,
you're
yeah,
now you've given her this version
because
of you. Your oldest one gets to see you like
it's
this.
generational. And I knew that like what I was dealing with was generational because my mom felt the same thing that my grandparents did, the same thing that their parents did. And everything was from abuse, diabetes, overweight, like everything that they experienced that was like horrible at living, like just paycheck to paycheck, like not being a survivor, dealing with all this crap, and my family, I was raised Italian, so in that, like, that was a part of our family, cohesiveness family, but discipline and being poor all the time and just like trying to get by is like just the norm. It was like, oh, I'm going to get my social security check this month, like that's how they lived. And I didn't want to live like that. And I didn't want that generational curse. So I just decided that I love my kids enough because someone said that to me once. They said, if you love your kids enough, love your kids enough to heal so that they don't have to.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, man. Okay,
And
you're right.
and
Because if you say you love them, you say you love them, but yet you won't change for them. Okay. Yeah, it makes me question your love for your kids. Because you'd rather wake up tomorrow and be this lousy, lazy piece of shit that just doesn't give a shit, right? All day long, boo-hoo you, right? Victim me, victim that. Oh, okay, cool. Well, now your kids are going to suffer. And then their kids are going to suffer. Who's going to stop the generational curse?
and that's where this becomes spiritual. That shows your spirit, the strength of your spirit to take on changing generational curses. Like if you think about all the generations, your parents, your grandparents, your great grand, if you think of them in your mind as, if you see them in your mind and you're the one who stopped it, that's such a big deal. That's it's not just resilience, it's spiritual strength. It's your soul's calling, and then now you're doing it for others. Now you're showing up on, here, social media, you're doing your podcast. So it went from you to your children to now the world. Like that's so powerful. That's your soul's purpose. That's so cool, right?
Yeah,
Like
I believe it. No, I believe it. I feel it 100%. And I mean, that's kind of where I was at. And I remember someone saying that, because I remember not feeling that love, not feeling loved enough, having everything you've said, the trauma, the betrayal, the loneliness, the solitude, the not being enough, the abandonment issues, all that, experiencing everything and just deciding to myself, man, you really say you love these kids, right? Well, would you heal for them? You know? That just really triggered me. That resonated with me. And after someone said that to me, I was like, you're right, I have to figure this out. And I remember figuring it out was the hardest part because as soon as I started doing things different, people were like, wait a minute, hold on a second. The other, I call him the other dude, the devil came to play and side of people. And they were like, wait a minute, hold on. That's not you. No. You're that piece of shit that I remember like from like 2 years ago. You're that horrible person that did all those evil things. You're that man that was overseas like murdering people. I remember all these things. You can't hide from that. It's like, yeah, I did those things 100%, but my kids haven't yet. So I'm going to save them. Yeah. I'm going to be a different person for them.
But that's God sent too. Those voices are God sent too. Like the fact that those people are testing your resolve, and then you have your free will to choose yourself and your higher calling. that's the spiritual part too. Free will of, okay, I'm not going to bend. I know I have even if this isn't a conscious conversation, your spirit chose that. Your spirit chose.
Your subconscious, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is the
like
voice. I think it's the authentic voice of God in a sense. I mean, some people argue that, but I believe that your subconscious,
I
that
love
voice that's
that.
telling you to do
I
certain
love that.
things.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
I've never heard it called that way, but I love that.
Yeah.
Authentic voice of God.
Yeah. I mean, in
I love
reality,
that.
like if you know your conscience is telling you to do something, you know, and some people say, well, what if it's telling you to do something evil? It's like, well, that's not God speaking.
Right?
Not every
Right.
not every part of your subconscious is God. I don't believe. I believe that if it's something that you know is the right thing to do, I think it's him. And I also think that God tests us because if you've been tested, you've been selected. And people say like, "Oh, what does that mean? Tested, selected? You're selected for the next level, brother." You know,
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
selected. He's like, "Hey, you said you wanted it. You've been asking for those prayers and all those blessings, and then now I'm going to give it to you. And now you're going to do what? You're going to act a fool. You're going to break character. You're going to be what you don't want to be. You're going to break your identity, this new identity that you're developing. You want to just lead into this whole other identity that's the old version of you. Cool. Let me see it because I won't give you that blessing." Because they say that,
Right.
and I'm getting baptized this Sunday, and it's crazy because everyone in my groups that I'm in, they said that you're going to get hit the hardest right after baptism. Did you experience that?
Yeah, that's true.
They say you're going to get hardest with the everything, money. It's going to take it from you. Like people are going to come at you sideways. You're going to get solicited with this, with that, you know, with everything falling apart, your emotions coming haywire. Everyone's going to resent you. But that's the test.
Well, you've been tested before, so
I
it
don't
doesn't
mind
matter.
being tested. I love being tested because when I'm tested, that means like it's almost like the same thing when someone talks about you. When people talk about you indirectly, bad, good, it doesn't really matter. Like they're literally making you more valuable. Why would they talk about you?
Yes. So
I used to
true.
always say the same thing. Like when grown men talk about other men, it's weird. It's weirdo shit. Like if you're a grown man, I've never in my life, I've talked about a few men, but they're men that I completely admire and I respect. You know, maybe two guys ever, but they're like literally at this level that's just so unforeseen for me to even get to, but I'm going to get there one day. But I talk about that in a way, and one of them's God. So if I want to try to be like anything similar to that, or at least strive to be that, right? You better make sure it's like something about like, and I see it online all the time when I'll make a comment, I'll say something, and you get all these random guys just trying to say like nasty things, you know, like just anything to get attention. It's like, wait a minute, you're commenting on another man's page, trying to get another man's attention. It's like, you didn't DM me this. You wanted it publicized so you can get attention. It's like you're literally talking to another man and talking about another man. Like, what does your woman think of you? Like, could you imagine being a man talking about other men all day? Like, oh, yeah, there's this other guy. He's doing this in his life and this in his life. Like, your woman's going to be like, wait a minute, hold on. I'll go date that guy then. Because he sounds a whole lot better because you're hyping him up. You're making him more valuable to me.
Right.
It's just weirdo shit. I don't know, but that's what we need. And I think that when you've been tested, you've been selected 100%.
I totally agree with that.
Do you think people spend too much time trying to understand why they were traumatized instead of focusing on who they can become because of what they went through?
Well, I think we can't neglect either one of those. I think we need to validate that things did happen to us. They did have an impact on our mind, our body, our spirit, on every part of us, even the expression of our DNA. So there is an impact to, especially complex PTSD. There is a major impact. And so we need to do that. We have to do that. Otherwise, we think we're broken. Otherwise, we think there's something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you. You're expressing yourself the way anyone would express themselves if they went through what you went through. So that's important, but it's not about living in there. Okay. And then it's the other part. The next step is the second part that you said about, okay. And then now that I know there's nothing wrong with me, now that I know that this is what happened to me, then, that's a major question in if you're trauma informed, you never say what's wrong with you. You always say what happened to you. So now that I know this happened to me, now that I know
Why is
this
that important?
impacted,
Why is that important to say what happened to you?
because when you say what's wrong with you, I'm in the question, I'm already implying there's something faulty with you. If I say what happened to you, I'm acknowledging that
It's
whatever
past
you're
tense,
showing up as, whatever you're showing up as, it's because
right?
of something that happened to you.
Yeah.
So it's important to know that, like when I was speaking about compassion
Okay.
earlier, it's important to know that whatever you look at someone, whenever you see someone saying something, doing something, or whatever, that's that's not really great, then curiosity is, I wonder what he's going through. I wonder what she's going through. Or I wonder what happened to them for them to show up this way, because that isn't their highest expression. And we were all born to be in our highest expression and reflections of God. So when someone is not a reflection of God, instantly, I mean, I'm trained, and I've trained myself to say, I wonder what happened. I wonder why they're not at their fullest potential. I wonder why they're not striving for their fullest potential. So that's that. So then, what your original question was, we need to acknowledge both. We can't just ignore what happened to us. Like, for example, cognitive behavior therapy is just about fixing your thoughts. But trauma therapy is about, let's go to the root of what happened so we could understand and acknowledge it, have consciousness of how it impacted us. And then from there, we could go, and we could also appreciate ourselves and have self-compassion and even self-forgiveness and forgiveness for others, so that then we can move on into our highest expression, because it's only the highest expression of ourselves that could have the most fulfilling life. It's only that version of us that's going to receive blessings, miracles and blessings. The other side, the survival self creates chaos and pain. My highest expression is going to create miracles and blessings. Which one do we choose? Which are we going to choose? But we need to really go back. A lot of people say, oh, therapy just takes you back. And that, it is true. It is true, because there's a lot of therapists that don't move from there. They just remove your symptoms, but eventually you'll get triggered and all your symptoms will come back. So we need to move. We also need to go to possibility, potential.
That's interesting how you said that triggers could make your symptoms come back. So you have to almost overcome the triggers first. Like what happens when you're triggered? What are you going to do? It's like you have to create like an out, like a safety plan, almost like people that want to commit suicide. You get like, what's your safety plan, right?
Well, yeah, it's about acknowledging, it's about having awareness and consciousness of what triggers me. And it's about being able to have free will to choose reactivity over being proactive.
Power choice.
If you're like blind and you're not able, if you don't know what's triggering you and you're just being reactive, what are you doing? You're being in your survival self. You're just being reactive, and you don't even have a choice. You don't even have free will. You're just reacting from your ego. You're reacting from your subconscious, from your survival self. When I have consciousness, then I'm able to say, okay, hold on, I'm triggered. I could see why. I might be triggered for like 24 hours, 48 hours. But then in that consciousness, I'm able to choose what's best for me out of wisdom, discernment, love, compassion, forgiveness. Like out of all these, what's best for me.
How long does it take for an actual emotion to pass? Isn't it like 7 minutes or something for an actual emotional feeling to pass? 7 minutes, 10 minutes?
I've heard that before, but I don't know. It depends. I guess it depends.
Well, they say that it only lasts that long, but whether you replay it in your mind again, because it's comforting to know that it's there. Like, wait a minute, hold on. No, they did this to me. And it's like 7 minutes passes. Well, hold on a second. Let me replay it again. They did this to me. Because it makes you feel empowered. It gives you like a grind, to like think about, like you want to like grind on it. It's like, but how does that help you? It's almost better to just let it go and then provide peace and grace, right? Like, okay, I'm going to wish grace on that. You don't have to forget. But you can forgive, right? And provide grace.
Right. Forgiveness is okay. Let me just say something else. So what I teach my clients is, if we are functioning from the premise that everything that's happening to us is for our growth and for our good, then like what you actually said this without saying it the way I'm saying it right now. So if I believe everything that happens to me is for my good and it's all going to work for the good, I have certainty and faith. If I have certainty and faith and I believe that, then when I'm triggered and something bad happens, I have the ability to step back and ask, what is this trying to teach me? What wisdom could I extract from this? There's always some good that you could extract from any experience. When you're like that, you're automatically being proactive.
I like
you're no
that.
longer reactive. So if we live in a state of most people are like 99 to 100, like most people are living completely reactive in the dark. They're not conscious.
Yeah, and the negative.
They're survival stuff. I call it survival stuff. But once you're proactive, then it's a whole different way of living, a whole different way of being. Things don't affect you the way that it would have, because I always think, okay, this is for my good. Even if, for example, if someone, let's say I meet someone and and we start dating and I'm really into the person or whatever. And then all of a sudden something happens, like let's say betrayal, or they just disappear. Because I have the premise that I have, that everything that's happening is happening for the good, that I get to tell myself, you know, this was divinely selected this way for what I needed to be with this person or meet this person for this amount of time. And well, what did I get from that? And what is this teaching me? And what did it bring out in me? Because it isn't just someone teaching me. It's also like, what did I get to experience? What did it bring out of me? Because sometimes, for example, we're talking about relationships, a relationship doesn't last, but because of the relationship, you were able to see, I want more of that quality that this person had, and it made me feel good. Or I don't want more of that because that I for sure now know that I'm not going to put up with that. So it could be either way. So you're always extracting wisdom from every situation and every experience. And so I no longer think of things as good or bad. Actually, I now I look at everything as good. Everything is good. Everything is good.
So that's like one
Everything.
habit that everyone should start with today. That was my next question.
Yeah, yes, and
Everyone would start with everything, every experience you ever have is good. Try to find some good in it, even if it's like 0.5%. Because I know a lot of people are going to have a hard time with this, but like, what about the worst thing that could happen for most people? I think is betrayal, right? Especially in relationships or abandonment. Like in childhood. And a lot of people suffer with that. And if you suffer with that, it's like, well, what was the good that came out of it? So for me, if I want to talk about abandonment, it could be like, well, I had no choice but to never settle with the plan B because there is no plan B, right? I don't have anybody. So if I don't have anybody and I have to rely on myself 100% because it's either that or nothing happens, then like I'm going to have to be stronger. But if I have things to fall back on, then I could say, okay, well, if I had things to fall back on, I might be a completely different person today. So that's like a positive thing. You could look at it all.
If what you and I, for example, what you went through in your childhood, what I went through in my childhood, I'm grateful for it. If that wouldn't have happened to me, I wouldn't know how strong I am. I wouldn't have resilience. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I wouldn't have gone to court and fought for, I don't know how many kids I have fought for in court. I wouldn't have had the strength to do that because inherently that's not me. I would have to pray outside of court every single time and say, God, put the right words in my mouth. God, help my hands stop shaking, and then I would stick my hands underneath my legs. But that gave me the strength. How many kids have me and my agency, how many kids have we helped and possibly saved because of what we went through and because that gave us the courage to go out and help others? So in a way, everything that happened to me in my childhood was a gift. It was a total gift.
Because it gave you the energy to go protect others.
And you did the same thing.
They say the same thing. Yeah, they say that you're your best suit to help the person you used to be.
Right. Say that again.
Your best suit to help the person you used to be.
Yes.
Or best fit, yes. Whatever. Yeah.
It indicates what people that say, oh, I don't know what my purpose is. Okay, let's look into your past. Because more than likely.
Jesus.
More than likely
I never heard of it that way. I never thought of it that way. And I struggle. I started off with two things, and this is how I always started off my podcast. I said I had two choices to live. It was either I was going to live life by purpose or I was going to live it by sacrifice. Right. So like I believe in like sacrificial living, like I'm going to sacrifice my life for somebody else's because like what's good for a wasted life, So in my eyes, and this is what a lot of veterans deal with, they deal with PTSD. And now I'm learning about PTSD or complex PTSD, right? And that it's generated from childhood trauma. And there's a lot of vets that come into, the military and they have all these trauma, being homeless, being molested, being raped, and I'm talking about men here too, guys that suffer from being abused and being on drugs and incarcerated and anything you could think of. And then they're just thrown into the military to say, hey man, we're going to just throw a Hail Mary on this one to see if the military can help you out. Right. And so all these guys experience all these things. Right. And they get through it, but they don't ever get through their past, like healing. They've never actually healed, So like in my head, I can't remember what my train of thought was on that. I had something I was going to say, but, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I was going to say. I totally forgot. Anyways, I'll move on to the next one. What's one myth you'd like to eliminate about trauma? Like one myth that like everyone says about trauma is this or blah, blah, blah. Like what's one major myth that everyone talks about you want to eliminate completely about it?
That you can't heal from it.
That's
not true. Or the other big one is that that you end up broken.
Mm.
We're not broken. Like there's this Japanese art, I don't know, I forgot the name of it, but they take like like say a broken bowl, and then they put gold in it, and then it turns into it turns into something so beautiful. And so that's the myth. The myth is that we're broken. No, we're not broken. It gave us, like what we're talking about, purpose. It gave us, it shows our resilience. It shows so much. So that, and it's not a pathology. The way our body responds to it and our mind and everything, it's not a pathology. It's a normal adaptation. You know, when you're in war, you're going to adapt in certain ways that might not be functional and out here in civilian life, but it's an adaptation. You have to adapt to your circumstances. So children adapt. So the issue would be when that adaptation turns into a way of being ongoing, you know, as an adult. But the same way we adapted to that, we could adapt also to pleasure, joy. By the way, that's also a big part of healing, is learning to experience joy, pleasure, you know, pleasure is a big one. A lot of people with trauma don't allow themselves to receive. They think it's wrong to have pleasure. And there's so much pleasure is a vehicle for healing when you remind yourself that, oh, I could experience pleasure. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what they say about God. God provides joy, and the world provides happiness. And some people say, what's the difference? Well, happiness only exists if you're actually happy about your current conditions. As soon as those conditions change, they become negative, you can still experience joy with God, but you don't experience happiness in the real world.
And yeah, that's so good. Going back to your myth question, a big one that
I actually remembered what I was going to say too, but you can go.
A big one is, this is such a big one. I want to like highlight it in yellow. There's not, again, it goes back. There's nothing, I want people to just like put it in their heads for themselves and for others. There's nothing wrong with us. Something happened to us. If we could just remember that is such a big one.
That's
if we
huge.
Approach the world, we approach the world like that, and we approach even our own selves, we stop judging. That erases judgment, and it creates curiosity for ourselves and others. So that's probably a big one.
That's huge.
There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us.
No, there's nothing. Things happen to us.
Happens.
It's almost like that one thing where they say, I don't have to, I get to. You know, stop saying that you have to do something. You get to do something. See the difference?
Yeah.
You know, I always tell people that. But I want to go back to that sacrifice thing. So I got to a place where my anxiety got so overwhelming that I didn't want to exist anymore. And I got to a place where I just couldn't defeat it. I've never had my mind take over. And it's part of my ADHD and just my mind racing. And I decided, okay, well, I can't survive and I don't have a purpose for myself right now because I don't know what that is, right? Because I didn't think about what you said where like your purpose is like, let's look at your past and I'll tell you what your purpose is, right? Because who you were back then is exactly your purpose, is to relive that person, to condition that person to be a winner, survive that person, and then elevate that person, and then gift that person to the world, and then teach others to heal and do the same, right? But I didn't have that. So if you don't have that, you have two things, and this is what I tell all veterans. You have purpose and you have sacrifice, right? And so if you can't find purpose and you don't know your purpose, you don't know what to live for, what it is you're supposed to do, you just haven't figured that out yet, because everyone has a purpose. God says it in the Bible. Everyone has a purpose and a vision for this world. That's why suicide's against Christianity. You can't commit suicide. It's illegal. It's like, not that it's illegal. You're not supposed to do it. You know, I don't know another way to say it. But sacrifice in itself is in the Bible. There's a lot of times where God sacrificed certain things. People sacrifice himself on the cross for us. So if you get the idea that, okay, I don't understand what's going on with my world today. I feel alone. I feel whatever it is. I'm going to sacrifice myself. So what I did is I sacrificed myself for my kids. And what I mean by that is I gifted every day to live for them. They got up. I told them I loved them. I took them to school. I did everything for them. Called them all day long. What do you need? You need a transporter. You need to go around somewhere. You need to buy you dinner. You need to buy you food. Stuff that you would normally do as a parent, but overdoing it to the point to where you're literally their slave. You know, almost like you're prospecting for a job. You know, you're just trying to do anything you can to get that job, and you're not getting paid for it. You're just doing whatever you can. Once you do enough of that and you're living for somebody else, you're becoming selfless, because I think selflessness is the way to our purpose. Gifting yourself to others constantly in a healthy, positive way is the way to find your true purpose. Because eventually once you gift yourself so many times, eventually people start opening up to you, and healing other people is actually what heals yourself. So once you start healing yourself, you start coming to fruition on who you're supposed to be. And that elevation of life starts giving you an opportunity to really find out what your passion is. Once you figure out your passion, you figure out your purpose. Because all you got to do is look at what you like doing all day long. What do you talk about all day long? What is your energy driving to? Where the energy flows, the energy goes. So wherever that energy is generating to, that is officially dedicated to your purpose. That is your purpose.
That's high level healing and spirituality. That's high level. So that's I love it. I love what you're saying. That's the end. That's self-actualization. That's living fulfilled and in your potential and your highest potential and as your highest self. And then it just keeps going, because so it's like a cycle. Once you reach that highest level of self-actualization, then you have more self-awareness. With more self-awareness, then you have more self-development and more consciousness, and then it just keeps going, and it never ends. It just keeps going, and that's why there's no ceiling to it. How many times, like when people say, "How do I know what my highest potential is, or what my possibilities are?" Well, they're endless. Your possibility. We don't even have enough time in our lifetime to experience all of them. So the best thing to do is to live proactively and not deal with the little things. Little things are who approves of us, who likes it, who doesn't like it. If you're just focused on what you're saying, everything you just said, that's high level healing, because as you do that, you continue to heal yourself. And it's high level spirituality. It's high level living on the side of being proactive. You're not living in the ego. Everything you just described is no ego. It's all spirituality. It's all living out of your soul. And you said what you said something earlier that sounded so good. You said what was it that you said about God? And you said something so
ego
good.
stands for exiting God out for first. that's the first thing I want to identify. That's what that stands for.
What you just described is zero ego. That's zero ego, zero living out of survival self. You're just living a spiritual life. So that's amazing.
What do you think level. If you were to leave the message today, right, to millions of people, and one heard this message today, what would it be? You just leave one thing on the table for you, like for everybody to hear, and everyone could hear it. What would it be?
Okay, so I would say it's simple. Like, it doesn't matter what happened to you. It doesn't matter what they did to you. It doesn't matter what you've done to yourself. The minute you choose authenticity and living out of your soul, then everything will change for you. We're not our past. We're like who we choose to be. We're who we're choosing to be every moment, and nothing that has happened could take that away. There's a verse about that. Like I don't know the verse exactly, but the verse is about darkness and light, and the light is always going to. Do you know that verse? The light will always make the darkness disappear. I know that's not exactly how it's said.
Yeah. No. Do you have it? What is that from the Bible? I don't know. What is it about? What is the verse about lightness and darkness in the Bible? Let me see what it says. Hold on. And then we'll close up. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
Right. The darkness cannot overcome the light. So
that's correct.
Once you live in your light, once you live in the light, once you awake, even this podcast episode right now could awaken people to the light. And once the light shines through, darkness is gone. So even just saying, I have light in me, I'm going to be proactive, now you're automatically on the other side. Then it's about choosing the side of being proactive and spirituality constantly. I call it spirituality because, I'm sorry, my phone.
You're fine.
I call it spirituality because it's living from our soul, from our light, from our greatness, from our spark. We have God's spark in us. So like that. It's from living in that space. Once you're there, nothing that has happened could destroy it, because that's darkness. And once my light is shining, there's no more darkness. You see what I'm saying? So nothing the point is, nothing that has happened has diminished the light within you. It's about finding that light again and letting it express itself through authenticity.
I love that. Well, it's great. We need to do this again. This is pretty good. I got a few layers down on this one. I feel like there's so many layers to unfold, and we could just go on forever. But I think we definitely helped some people today. I think there's a lot of people out there experiencing trauma in all different ways, and they've just never healed from it. And I think that if you take it from me, someone that's been through a shit ton of trauma and someone that's been through it as well for yourself, right? In different ways and shapes and forms. Like there's people that have experienced it on all different levels. But if you're someone that's experienced trauma on any way, any form, symptom, whatever you think you have stuff, make sure you reach out to, you want to just put your handle out there and so people can find you?
If I say Sarai Nummar, I don't know how they're going to be like, what?
You can just spell it. You can just spell it. Just spell out your Instagram handle and we'll call it a day.
Sarai, Sarai. And my last name is Nummar, Nammur. Sarai Nummar, Sarai. It's really supposed to be pronounced Sarai. Sarai Nummar.
Sarai Nummar at Instagram.com. No, I'm just kidding. at
everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube.
Exactly.
Everywhere.
Well, this is amazing. I've learned a ton, and I thought I knew a lot already, and I just learned a whole lot more. So I'm super thankful for you. And yeah, I'll get you connected with me, and we'll do another one soon, hopefully. And on top of that, I'm gonna provide some clips and some cuts too for you, so you could post it on your Instagram and whatnot.
I have a little gift for your audience too, so I'll send you the link for that as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll tag it. Just do like a little tag or a story or whatever after this, and I'll tag it. We'll do something.
Yes.
Stay connected for a second. Okay. I'm gonna close out here, but if you have anything to say it now. If not, we'll check out.
Well, thank you for having me. This was so much fun, and just thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast.
I love it. Thank you so much for having been here. Up until next time, guys, get up, get after it, and get some.
Bitch, don't get too comfortable. Better not get too comfortable. Better not get too comfortable. Yeah, bitch, don't get too comfortable.